It's quite a good discussion, I think, something that we really need to have, like, as a community. Titled, Open Source Process for the OpenRISC project. So how do you want to run this? You're going to chair it.
I'm going to chair it. I've proposed a structure of a number of issues we need to discuss, and I'll bring them up in each one. And for some of them, we may want, as a group, as the nearest we get to a representative body on, of course, because we don't have a formal structure, to discuss, and as a consensus around this table, agree what we want to do going forward. We aren't going to solve all the issues we've got, but it's the best opportunity we have to get together as a group and try and work out. We're getting bigger as a group as each year goes by. At some stage in the future, we'll have to get more formal. We don't yet have to do that, but this is a great opportunity to discuss these issues. I've put this up as a starter. It's got my name against it, but actually several of us thought this was a good thing to do at this meeting. And I think they cover subjects that over the last year have come up a lot. And I've pulled out 4 of them in particular. First of all, the processes by which, as we get bigger and have multiple contributors to each product, up until a year or so ago, basically there was one person working on each sub-project. So you didn't really need much of a process. Now we have multiple people updating the RTL, multiple people changing the tool chain, and we need to be a bit more rigorous to make sure that we continue to deliver good quality. That just like other major projects, we have a review process so that stuff only goes into a stable repository when it is stable. If it's not, it goes into an experimental repository. Second, I've got 5 issues, sorry, not 4. The second is a bit about how we structure the projects. At the moment, OpenCores has a 900 and something projects, you said, Johan? Yeah. But it's dominated by OpenRISC, and that's fine, except the OpenRISC project also includes the tool chain, ORPSOC. Should we actually, as a group, actually be starting to break that up a bit, just to make it controllable? So it's not one monster project and a few little things around about. And that touches a bit on what Olaf was talking about earlier, and I'm sure he'll have some views on that. Third thing, this sometimes gets into quite serious flame wars. Choice of version control system. And sorry? Yeah, there's one where we'll all stop fighting each other and fight Olaf instead. So that comes up, the whole Git, SVN, CVS thing comes up, and I think it'd be good to air the issues and see if there is any consensus coming. It hasn't been such a big issue for the last few months, so maybe it's less important now. Fourth issue, where should repositories live? OpenCores has always hosted CVS originally and now SVN. There is big pressure on providing Git. There is a Git repository for your stuff, Olaf, but there's also an OpenRISC organization on GitHub. And rather than fragment, it would be good if we as a consensus could decide what we want to do. And that then impinges onto a second discussion is, but then what's the purpose of OpenCores.org? And at some stage that will come into discussion. And lastly, mailing lists and IRC. We discussed this last time we met a year ago. We have 2 OpenRISC mailing lists, one run by OpenCores.org and one run by Jonas Bonn. And what we agreed last year was we would like those to merge, but until the 2 owners could agree on merging, we would all cross-post. I'd like to revisit that. I think most people agree with that, except we have one contributor who isn't here, Ruben Diaz, who insists on always deleting one of the processes. So all my blooming discussions get fragmented. It would be quite nice if we could just agree that we carry on as we did, which is to cross-post to both, and then your discussion statement. Or we can agree we disagree with that. Well, that's the discussion to have. Similarly, we have 2 IRC channels. That's less of an issue. There's a hash OpenCores and a hash OpenRISC. Whether we want to say something about how those are used, that's a discussion to have. And there may be other issues there. Do we want other channels on hash open, on Freenode and so forth? So those are the 5 issues I came up with. I'm not sure if anyone's got others they think we ought to cover.
So I have an alternative report, but it could be worth to have an efficient product. I'm not expert in the area, but I mean, looking into, since there is so many skilled engineers and how this project is run in terms of project methodology. Not, I mean, there is like waterfall, there is XP, there are agile versions, and I'm not the expert to say how this kind of project should be run, but it's probably not in the waterfall versions where you just do everything and hopefully get something out of work. It should be agile, and it should be, and I guess perhaps not. Perhaps we can cover it all, but it could be worth start thinking about.
That's a very good point. Perhaps we'll wrap that into the first issue, the process review, because I think it's all very closely tied in.
Can you say that again, Johan? I missed.
Yeah, I have said it could be worth thinking about how we work within the project. I mean, if it is working, there is project methodologies like waterfall and agile working methodology.
Right,
yeah. If we small things and always go in reverse and so on. And I'm not an expert in these kind of project leading, so I think it's somebody perhaps it would be worth and have in mind where we decide how to work in these.
Okay.
Or left 4 years.
Okay, we'll cover that.
It's kind of tied to the repository choice and the project.
Okay, we'll try and pick that up as best we can as we go. Simon is capturing the notes as he goes. He'll save them regularly, so you'll be able to see them appearing on the wiki as we go along. And that gives you an opportunity. If you think something glaringly horrendous has been misreported, do say straight away. We can fix it immediately. The link's been tweeted. It's been put on IRC. If anyone can't find it, just ask Simon.
Is there a link on the project meeting page?
Yes, it's on the project meeting page, basically. Okay. Right, so let's pick up the first subject. If you're behind me and you want to speak, you're going to have to tap me on the shoulder or wave a hand in front of me or shout. So, first issue, let's look at the whole process issue, the project structure. Johan's given us a starter, and I think it's a good place to start on organising the project. Julius has sort of been acting as a bit of a project manager for the last year, so I'm not sure if you've got any comments, Julius?
I wouldn't rely on me to manage the project anymore. That's my comment. Yes. I don't know.
It begs the question, do we need a project manager for the whole project?
I don't know what sort of role you're talking about, though.
It's the role, say, that you see with I can't remember what they call them on GCC, but the guy who herds the cats, to basically try and keep things from fragmenting, going all over the place, and so you really take some decisions to not tell everyone what to do, but to really try and keep a degree of order in what goes.
That, because then we can avoid duplication and fragmentation. I mean, someone has a rough overview of everything that's going on, but maybe don't touch any code themselves. I don't know if anyone would volunteer for it, but I think it would be a good role to do.
So defining the role, it would be someone who has some sort of authority in the project who people defer to.
I mean, like example, the December thing. People start working on things like that, and maybe if someone new had an overview and knew that 4 people are working on this one. Should join the portal.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that the project leader's role? I mean, he shouldn't perhaps doing the job of different parts. He should have control of it all and saying, okay, now I know that Olaf is doing this, Julius is doing this, and I know that Julius actually needs extra help, so flagging for this. That's kind of the work and that a project leader should have. And that's probably a more or less a full-time. Since we probably none of us doing this full time. Anyhow, it's a full, what we can require from one person, that person perhaps is able to do a load of other kind of development, I guess.
Yeah. Is it perhaps also one of the key roles is actually to keep that organisational top level reflected in, say, the wiki structure? And I often see a project manager, one of their best things they can do is, for example, to just make sure that the top level documentation of a project is clearly structured so people can find their way around that. Do we have anyone volunteering to pick up this sort of role? Which maybe...
I would love to, but my lack of time.
I can't think of any one person who will be able to do that. you need somebody doing it almost full time. It sounds like a Linus Torvalds of OpenCores, but Linus Torvalds gets paid by Linux Foundation and he works full time, for example. I know that that's an exaggeration, but still it's kind of the same thing. And he has, of course, the authority, actually, of being a creator of Linux.
Sure.
I think we can find anyone today, but I think we should define the role more or less, so that if someone is step up behind it.
Olaf, would you like to take the charge of defining the role?
I can do it.
Good. Excellent. So I think that's a good, positive first start. But it is something I think we bear in mind, and perhaps when we meet again, we may be saying, no, we've really got to find a way of getting someone who can do this.
Perhaps the role could be shared.
Exactly, yeah.
That's what I reckon. You'd have a domain-specific sort of manager. So
yeah, I mean, I guess the question is there someone who's keeping the domain-specific managers talking to each other almost? That may be the role I'm thinking of. But perhaps if Olaf gives us, and if it's up on the wiki, we can debate it, we can discuss it on IRC and so forth. Then the specific question I asked was the process for review, approval and commit of changes. Now for the simulator, which I'm the main responsible guy, we basically put together a process based on what we've seen on several other open source projects, which is where we have a number of approved maintainers, which is me and Julius, who believe we know ORCSIM well enough to be able to decide if something's good. And we have said that if anyone wants to contribute, including us, they should post to the mailing list saying, here's my patch, and it has to be approved by one of us. And if I want to make changes, it has to be approved by Julius and vice versa. You can't self-approve, apart from trivial stuff. And once it's approved, then it will be committed to the repository. And you may have developers who actually have right approval, what's called in GCC terms, right after approval. Meaning, if it's been okayed by a maintainer, then they don't have to do it, you can actually then commit. And that's a structure that we've suggested for our 1K sim, which has a certain degree of scalability. The question is, does that work for the rest of the project? Is it something that we should impose for other parts of the project? Should we let each lead maintainer on parts of the project design their own process? So that was the question.
We do have steps in OS 100 and Workshop, I believe. I'm not sure it's written down anywhere, but those two components we have tried to. With Julius, press I, Stefan,
what's the question we're answering here, though?
We've put a process in place for ORCSIM. Sounds like you've got one.
Yeah.
And for ORCSIM, it's documented in that there is a maintainers file that tells you who the maintainers are and what the process is for committing.
So you're asking for each part of the project, is there a process?
Is there a process? Should there be a process? If so, if there isn't, and we think there should, how do we get it there? Sounds like some parts have got it.
Well, if we go around the components that are officially, part of the project, that are, used by several people and, I don't know, hosted on OpenCores and, officially part of the OpenRISC project, and not just still skunkworks by someone or someone tinkering, then I would say, we've got OR 1200. We can see, Frank, you sent a post patching the OR 1200 to the mailing list, discussed and acted by the other guys, who we then either apply if we can, or apply if we have time, but if the person can apply it to the repository themselves, then we give them permission to do so, right?
Okay.
So that's what we do for the RTL.
Yeah, but one point about that is that I was bringing up is that it's committing patches we are committing too little of patches, I think. There's a lot of patches just laying around on the mailing list that no one ever committing and probably should be committed. And I think that is a big problem. So in that way, the system that we have doesn't work. I think it's a good thing to have. We get the patches into the mailing list, but the approval that needs I think just that silence is a sign of approval. That if someone doesn't complain about it in a certain amount of time, then it just goes in without a question.
So that's part of the reason this question came up is I seem to be seeing on the hardware side what looked a lot of discussion and no action. Now, as you get to higher quality, the question is if you have silences approval, you have the danger of, just by accident, bad stuff being committed.
Yeah, of course.
It may, but the role of a project manager, if you get something like GCC, what Richard Gunter will go around is saying, hold on, why hasn't someone reviewed this particular patch? Because it's been sitting there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one of the project management roles of saying, hold on, make a decision. Reviewer, are you saying yes or no, rather than just acknowledging it? And maybe at this stage all we need is, do we just need to say that for these things is a reviewer, when they comment on a patch, must either say approved or not approved, not just discuss it.
Yeah. No, we're very good at discussing it, not approving stuff.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's not the end of the world if something bad gets committed. You can always revert it.
Of course, yeah, I understand that. But yeah, this one and then...
Could this be fixed by GitHub pull requests as units of patches? I mean, if the thing, as I see it, the thing with a patch, it's good if it's an item you can easily either approve or disapprove and discuss in one place, etc. And it's probably much easier to do that kind of thing. You have a very itemized approach to every single change. And
with
I kind of like the mailing list getting patches there because it's easy to read them there and you see them. If it's code that goes in somewhere that you maybe don't see it if it's a pull request, you don't look at it. If it goes to the mailing list, maybe you aren't interested in looking at it, but it's there. It's easy to look at it. It comes in your mailbox. It's easy to open and you see it. So I kind of like that, the mailing list patches.
Yeah, Jan wants to make a comment.
Well, I was thinking this sounds like a place for a tool like Patchwork, which collects patches from the mailing list so you can tag them as if it's acceptable or rejected. And its main purpose is so patches on the mailing list don't get lost.
What projects use this tool?
For example.
So we have familiar. I mean, that sounds.
There is a Patchwork for the kernel as well. I don't know how much the developers actually use it, but there is a Patchwork for it.
Do you use comparables?
No, the project maintenance.
How easy would it be to set up, Jan?
Probably fairly easy.
Is that something you could do so we could try it out? And in practice?
I might give it a try on Monday.
Okay.
How does it work? What does it look like?
Basically, it pulls all the patches that get mailed to the mailing list and put it on a web page. Okay. So you can just browse it and see what patches have been posted to the mailing list and see what
the status is.
Yeah, what it says. You can mark them as which.
Could I ask? Do we need a
call the
patchwork? Could I ask? Do we need patchwork? PATCHWRK. Do we need a separate patches mailing list? I know lots of other projects have a separate patches mailing list to keep the patches in a separate stream.
I don't.
No.
We have two separate.
Yeah.
You want the third one?
So.
Okay, right. Okay,
no, I think we don't
I think that's a consensus. We don't need to discuss that anymore.
My worry is though that even if we use Patchwork, I think that could be a good idea, but my worry is that still it's a matter of we don't have enough people that are competent enough to look at the patches. And that's the main problem. Yes.
The other thing is...
Competent maybe. Fine, no.
My major comment on this, which goes to every point that's been made, I think, is that it's RTL, man. It's not software. It's a bitch to test. It is an absolute nightmare. And just say, like, if your cache changes, right, or your bus interface test.
Yeah, who's going to agree there?
Yeah, exactly. What if that goes in and then, for some implementation in some corner case with a particular memory arbiter or something, it doesn't work. So it's really hard to put stuff in with high confidence level that it's not going to break a lot of other stuff.
if you look at...
I think this is a major issue, like we just don't have a very good verification suite. I mean, at the moment, I'm happy with making sure that all stock runs, right? If it's a change to the OI1200 and the all stock regression suite runs, I'm still a little bit worried that what I'm putting in is...
That's not very extensive.
Exactly, right? We need some very, very good verification suite. And then once we have that, you make people post the proof that their patch version still passes that, and then I'm happy, man, that's fine.
So the equivalent, because the other part of the OR1K sim thing is you can only have a patch in so long as make this check passes its 2,500 tests. But if you haven't got make this check...
No, it's not easy to do. That's the other thing. I see a patch, I got to apply, I got to get I got to get my repository in the state with the patch and then test it and make sure that it didn't, I didn't get any false negatives or anything. But make sure that it actually worked. And then I'm happy to, commit it. So.
But perhaps patchwork will at least give us visibility of the state of the problem.
Yeah, I think it will help.
At least it will keep track of the patches that haven't been applied. That's like
good.
One problem that it can solve. People make Ruben happy. Yes.
Ruben's happy. Oh no, I've lost my reference.
Sorry.
That's all right. Windows.
That's the process for the RTL stuff, on which you got to be very conservative. I think you can't just accept patches willy-nilly. What else?
That's another problem because, of course, it has to be stable, the RTL, but we really don't have any development version of it. It's like the development version is the stable version. So you can't really just...
I would say there's no stable version.
Yeah.
You've only got the development version.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem, because you can't just put in a patch because it will break for someone that is actually using it for something useful.
I started working on OS1200 version 3, where I tried to go through the SVM history and collect all the changes in a proper changelog file so we could have a stable base, but I haven't had time to complete that. But I think really we should release version 3 with so we know...
A lot of versions of tools.
Yeah, but third time lucky, man.
Would I be right in saying that from what I'm hearing, that the issues are around the RTL side of the project rather than the software and the toolchain side? Well, on this particular, I mean, the other problem. Okay. Anything more to say on this? I think we've come up with a couple of things. Olof to make some notes, to come up with some ideas on project management spec, and Jan to have a look at patchwork.
It's in terms of the RTL parts of the project, a lot of this problem is because I can't do a release to save my life. Like, I've been told to release the RTL for the last 2 years, the OI1200, and all stock, and I just haven't done a release. So, I think it's because I'm too conservative. I don't want to release it because I know there's still bugs in it or whatever. So, I don't know, maybe someone else should manage that. Someone who does the releases, someone who just says, I'm going to release it, put in all the patches you want within the next week, and within this date, and then I'm going to release it. I think I've proven I'm not very good at that. I just want to sit and hack on that. So
well, I kind of have the same position on that.
Okay, so maybe.
I mean, as Stefan said, I'm not the guy to decide what is worse. That is perhaps it's not coming in, or that perhaps someone coming in with a bug. I mean, we have to decide on that, and then just go for okay. It's not. Complaining in previous.
How hard is it to? I mean, how hard is it? How hard is it to split the project to have a dev branch as well as a stable branch, which is what we have on the tool?
I would say we need OS1200 release 3 or something stand upon that we can tell this is the last stable version. Then we can branch out to that one.
Okay, so that seems to be the key thing, is to get a version 3 stable that we can base on.
Yes.
And then you can branch for the experimental stuff.
Yeah, I'm slowly working up the FBM3.
Good. Okay, so it's in your gift. Okay, I'd like to, conscious of the time, I'd like to move on, because I think we've gone around that one a bit. Structure of the project. This hasn't been such a big issue again in the last few months, but every so often we come on the fact that we've got this one big project, and should we separate it out? Now, we've done that sometimes. MinSoc is separated out. But you can rather get the impression that you go to the OpenRISC wiki and you get flattened by the fact it's got everything on it. Should actually, within the OpenCores structure, we say OpenRISC is about the IP block called OpenRISC, and that things like ORPSOC and maybe even the tool chain are separate projects.
I would say the processor implementation is not, you know. So the thing on OpenCores is a page for the architecture, right? Which takes in implementations of the processor, toolchain, software, right? Mm-hmm. And then implementations of the processor with other IP is a separate project. So I think ORPSOC should be split out. But the page on OpenCores is, it's for the architecture, right? It's for the project even.
Right.
Yeah. And the OR1200 is separate, well, is a sub thing of that. So maybe you want to almost split everything away from that. Except for the, you know, how's the architectural spec there? And then maybe even have sub-projects for everything else. But I mean, who's going to do this? Are we going to alter the OpenCores SVN to reflect those changes, or?
Yeah, that's probably the thing. I mean, also version 3 is already separated, because that's what an easy part to split out.
Yeah.
And when we get the OpenOCD working properly, we can just remove our debug proxy, and we move out things. There are some things that are very easy to separate. I would say even the RTO should be moved out.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, like OR1K thing, that's a simulator of the architecture.
Oh, but that's clearly its own project, though. Stands by itself, I think.
I think that's the discussion.
Has its own Git repository these days.
Oh yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it would help, I think, to separate stuff out. And then only have architectural specification documents under the OR1K OpenCores project, and then have the OR1200 under something called OR1200, etc. So
then who is going to do the work? I mean, you've already done the ORPSOC v3. Where do the tool chains sit in their own project?
Oh, yeah, good question. I don't know.
Should there be an OpenRISC LLVM project and an OpenRISC GNU project?
But are we talking about the SVN repository, or are we talking about the wiki page?
Well, I think, am I right in saying, you know, on OpenCores, when you start a project, you get an SVN repository, you get a master web page, potentially you get a wiki.
You need one central place though to link to everything else.
Which can be the architecture project.
Yeah, exactly. Could be the OpenCores/OR1K, which is a wiki page that says, these are CPU implementations, these are toolchains, these are simulators.
So is it then the job of the individual project owners to take the initiative to start split these out? It doesn't have to be monolithic all in one go. As Olaf's shown, you can split off bits as time permits.
Do we have consensus to do this though? Does everyone think this is a good idea? To have a single OpenRISC 1000 entry point on OpenCores?
I would say we would need to work on the details there, exactly how we want to split it. But I'm all for the idea.
The proposal though is everything except for the architecture spec should live elsewhere. No one disagrees.
And I guess, I'm sorry if I understand. I guess we have discussed earlier today in several discussions that it's important to have the full ecosystem or whatever, all the points needed to actually use this and get easy started and find information and all these kind of things. So it has to be kind of collected in some way, the information, and some probably good structure of when you're coming in. It should be like natural. How do I find the information that I actually looking for, and where do I find the source, and what do I kind of thing has to be collected and probably in some kind of free structure. I don't know. And if the different parts of this project is kind of split up and sitting in some kind of free structure, I don't know. But that's, I guess, what we have to specify. How should this structure look like? And then, of course, we have to see how can we apply that on the OpenCores project. OpenCores.
I reckon we solved that with a good entry page on OpenCores/OR1K, right? We have a good wiki page sitting there which tells you where all the information is for the particular parts of the project. that's exactly what we want, right?
Yeah, like we have internal links now to like the org sub page of the OR1K.
Yeah.
That could be redirected to the org sub project page.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it won't make a difference for the end user.
Yeah, I completely agree, right? As long as there's a single entry point, and we maintain that, then we do, we make sure that stuff is organized on there. And I would want to also stress that I don't reckon it matters if the content linked to that isn't on OpenCores. So Sven's blog, for instance. Sven's not going to move that to OpenCores, right? It's going to live on the RT site.
Yeah.
There's going to be other bits and pieces around the web that people go to. I reckon we make sure that the opencores.org/OR1K site is the definitive directory of links to the rest of the project and links to other guides and things like that. And exactly.
But isn't this a possible problem when these kind of links or the information that they link to is not available anymore?
Yeah, but we have that problem internally.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That's probably a problem overall. But
they have to be updated.
You probably
I think we're starting to get back to the whole need for the project manager role of how do you make sure it all stays clean. And maybe one day we'll be like GCC with big corporations paying for lots of full-time staff. But it's a very valid point. So I think Julius has explained that the architecture page effectively acts as the overarching single point of entry, and then if it's good for particular projects to have their own central unit, so people working on that project have a focus where they're not cluttered up by everything else. That's good. But are we also happy that we don't have to take a monolithic decision now? We can let it happen incrementally as program managers feel that they're ready to split their bit of project out. Happy with that?
It could also be a kind of, that's an idea. Yes, we have discussed also that it's important that there is other commercial interest in this. It is important with all these kind of things. And if it's a problem that patch is not going in or patch is going in that is not correct and so on. And we fully know that some of you hate that OpenCores don't have Git, and that's of course fine. I mean, you have all parts have different need and different interest in this kind of thing, but currently, like having a beta or whatever, a development phase of the OpenRISC project, and all the things that actually things is in a good stage to be used by commercial interest or whatever, could be okay. Then we should have the same as you have in Git or whatever on your local repository or whatever. Should be added into OpenCores when we think this is actually tested and in a good way. Then it should be there. Yeah. And then if you want to link in and be a developer and actually be active in the project, then you have another kind of link to say, okay, this is on Julius GitHub. Whatever.
But that's still just like having releases.
Exactly. And the guys know that the it actually is available on OpenCores, not just a link, if it's actually in OpenCores, and because then they also know that it will always be available. But it also will always be up and running.
It all comes back to proper management.
Absolutely. But I
think no one's
saying a vision of how it could be. I'm not saying that it's done like this. I'm just discussing.
I think it's very good that, like as I'm saying, I reckon we should maintain the entry points of the project through OpenCores and mirror releases there. I completely agree with you. That'd be good. Yeah, but we got to do releases.
Strain on OpenCores maintainers too, because okay, let's say I want to put a stable release up there now. Now it's some FTP where I would put it, or where would I put it? The binary or something. Yeah. That's good.
That's how it's normally done. In our project, like no mouse FTP for the releases.
Yeah, but usually it gets a lot of messages that the FTP is down, or if I want a normal just web link then.
Mirror it somewhere else. Put a couple of links up. Put the OpenCores FTP, mirror it wherever. Pirate Bay torrent. I'm kind of not kidding. It's all changed, man. So, yeah, we just mirror it. Can we do that?
Or mirror it on
But
GitHub.
also, if the problem is that it's not Git is available, if that's the only the problem in that.
Perhaps we're moving on to, I think we've captured a lot of that. We're moving now automatically into the next question, which is about the whole choice of version control system and where should the repositories live. And I think this has at times been quite a hot, heated discussion on IRC. And I have, at times it's felt a bit like the answer's Git. Now, what did you say the problem was? We have users of Subversion, we have users of Git, we have upstream tools that use CVS, Subversion, and Git. Should we have, and on OpenCores.org, we only have SVN generally supported. Now, there's two questions come from that. One is, what version control system should be used? Should it be centrally decided? Should it be more locally decided? And the second question is, where should repositories live? And if they don't live on OpenCores.org, does that matter? So, open for comments now, I think.
I'll say that I reckon, and this has been the thing I proposed a while ago, is that people do their work wherever they want, right? They can have ClearCase on their local machine, they can work in GitHub. But I think ultimately, it sort of doesn't matter as long as releases go, as wide as possible. So I guess it comes back to doing releases. And development versions, I don't know, we link to them from the entrance point. So you make sure that people know that, say, it's a GitHub account or, OpenCores project page where you're doing your development, and releases are made available. But yeah, ultimately I don't think it matters too much as long as from the entry point on to the project on OpenCores, there's a big fat link saying this is where this work is going on, or this is where you can get a release.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to point out that the mere access linking to things will make them more reliable. Not only are people more apt to maintain websites that actually get access, it also lets crawlers just build or archive.org find stuff, which is where we recently actually found the wishbone specifications older than version 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Had to go to Internet Archive or something?
Yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
So I asked the second question, does it matter, for example, that the stuff that we're increasingly doing GitHub is mostly in Git is mostly held in GitHub? There's now an OpenRISC organization on GitHub. Does that matter?
From a development standpoint, I don't think it's not at all. But it could matter from a user standpoint.
That was really where my question was coming from, is if you're not keeping your source on OpenCores, do you get to a step where, yes, there's GitHub for the Git, but GitHub also offers you nice wiki facilities and nice markdown ways of writing. It's got very nice ways of doing wikis. And if the wiki starts to move there, I just have this question is there a risk of fragmenting up? And what OpenCores had is a huge brand awareness. People have heard of OpenCores because it's been going for 12 years and it's big. And as a community, we don't want to fragment into a whole lot of little bits. That was the question I was asking.
Yes, there's a big risk. I don't know the answer.
Right.
But I think it makes sense to have release versions of OpenCores.
And links to all other information from OpenCores as well.
Official entry point should be OpenCores.
I agree.
I think that's important.
And when you say release versions, you're thinking of something like a tar.gz or a binary rather than a...
Something that someone has tagged to be a certain release.
But if I tag it in my version control system. So are you saying there should be a Git repository on OpenCores, but it's only for stable versions, or
no, what I mean is that it should be easy to find whatever you call it, stable version at OpenCores. But you could have, I don't know, working versions, unstable versions anywhere else.
So you could have them both on GitHub, so long as they were both linked. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay, well,
the release version should be.
The problem is we have now is that the release versions are starting to get so old that they are not actually any good.
But
for example, the tool chain, that the 4.5.1 tool chain that is released is not as good as the one that is in SVN.
Oh, right. So there's a project management issue of should we be what you're saying, the 4.5.1 in SVN, there should be a new release of 4.5.1.
Probably, because that's now the stable one.
Yeah.
Then we have the 4.8.0 that is the experimental and like development version.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just take the one that is in SVN now, make a binary of that.
And it becomes 4.5.1. Release 2.
Question. I mean, because mostly when a project gets big, you automate things. So you have the master repository that is the stable one. You can't really commit any code that crushes, let's say, the test bench, etc. You can even automate that even if you merge something, it still has to pass certain tests, and then it gets merged automatically. So it's not, let's say, maintained by hand. And then you get automatic release of that, which is a, let's say, development version, but still from a stable repository. Then you have release windows. So at a certain point, you get a freeze, like this commit from the master repository is actually the release version. It's like it's done with Linux kernel. You get the release at a really precise point, and how much will actually end up in this particular release, it depends on the time. If you, let's say, you're working on something and you don't end it up to a certain deadline, it just doesn't end up in this release. It will end up in some other release. So the versioning is not dependent. Let's say we're doing some kind of a stuff, and we want release version 3.0 until we get that done, because that tends up to take forever. You can't really finish it, especially with open source projects, when you're working on that as a hobby. You work for every day for 1 week, and then you take a vacation for 1 month, and you block the project. No, it will just get released without your contribution. Sorry. That's how it works with Linux kernel, even though it's partly paid by Linux Foundation, etc. So, and you get that automated. So of course it's a lot of work to do, but then you get it, let's say, more or less automated. Of course, people still apply patches, etc., and it's decided by a narrow bunch of people in Linux kernel. But the whole releasing stuff, of course, the FTP, it's not really FTP. It's just an access to download files, but the files emerge there automatically by some kind of a, let's say, build bot. Google uses build bots or other similar stuff to do automated testing and releasing.
I think that's a good point. I think we tried to do that for the tool chain about a year or two ago. And actually, I think we found that as a community, we were not big enough even to do that, that we just could not get. Just the organisation of getting out binutils, newlib, GDB, uclibc, GCC, and orcs in some sort of order. We were trying to do one every 6 months, I think. And we just couldn't make it happen because for exactly the same reason. We are mostly volunteers, and you know, Julius tried hard, but we just couldn't get all the things even tagged to do that.
I have a related question, and I may have missed something, but the reason for those who use GitHub, is that because of Git, or is it because of the tools around GitHub?
One is piece of cake to set up an account there, and two, I like using Git now over SVN. So.
And three, GitHub. But Git is most, I think, the most important.
Another thing is, I don't think it's hurtful to have OpenRISC stuff on GitHub because it gives exposure to OpenRISC. People are searching on GitHub for OpenRISC, for example. They will get the OpenRISC project there and find OpenRISC through that. So that I think
that's more of a curiosity there.
It does carry a cost. I can say professionally, one of the things we suffer from is that the GNU toolchain is held upstream in SVN for GCC and GCF and CVS for everything else. And we now actually have customers who want to do, for the same reasons you say, want to release their toolchain on GitHub. And so we have this nightmare of actually maintaining in step 3 separate version control systems. And when we're trying to commit upstream as well, I mean, I do see this proliferation of version control systems, and in particular, not mirroring the upstream version control system does cause you some big headaches. I have got so many scripts for pulling stuff out of one version control system and turning it into a patch for a different version control system upstream. It's
Sorry, Jerry. You know what I say to this? You're getting paid to do that, so you charge them for the bloody
I know
the GNU project put you in.
I do charge them for that, but it's terribly hard to say, you know, I'm afraid your bill's doubled because you want to use.
Yeah.
It's astonishing how much time that takes. And I was sort of saying, yeah, I get paid for it, for my commercial work, but when we're looking at a volunteer project, we perhaps just want to think ahead as to imposing unnecessary burdens.
No, I think the unnecessary burden should not be on the developer. We're doing it for free.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to come on and use our work, I don't know.
I'm not sure we've actually reached a consensus on anything particular, but we've aired the issue, so I'm conscious of the time. We said we'd finished at 7:30. Mailing lists and IRC. The mailing lists, I think I described the situation correctly. We have two versions of the OpenRISC mailing list. The OpenRISC.net one, on the whole, Jonas has been perfectly decent about running that, but it is dependent on Jonas. And when loads of us lost our access to that mailing list, it did take 3 weeks to get us all back on there again. But equally, I think it's fair to say, Johan, there is no consensus on you and Jonas merging your mailing lists yet? No. Are we, as a group, happy to carry on with the policy of cross-posting to both mailing lists until that can be resolved? Yeah.
But I don't know if it's, I mean, what would merging mean?
How many?
I mean, okay, we discussed this last year. We said we should merge them. Okay, so what does that mean?
I think it.
I think the OpenCores, they thought it meant, okay, we should get it to OpenCores. I think Jonas thought, we should get off to OpenRISC.net. What does merging mean? Which should be them?
And what do we as users, we as users don't actually care. We just want one mailing list.
Yeah.
So
put it on OpenRISC.org.
It's also a bit of a PR problem when people come in and see the two.
No, but okay. So
some,
would it be technically possible to just merge the list so that all mails that goes to OpenRISC at OpenCores.org also go to? So it doesn't matter to what you mail to. It just goes to both.
Open areas for each other.
Yes, would that be technically possible?
I mean, I don't know enough about mailing lists. So.
Isn't Mailman some open source bit of software? Can't we just implement this feature?
But we have enough problem with our own software.
It doesn't matter to which list you post to. It gets to all the members of both lists.
I would like to have Jonas input on this.
Yeah, absolutely, but that's just like, it's not going to move from here otherwise. Wouldn't that be like the meet halfway solution?
Yeah, I agree. It's a sensible suggestion. We need to talk. Someone needs to talk to Jonas. Stefan, you know Jonas reasonably well.
We can record the message to Jonas.
Jonas has done a huge amount for this project, and it's a great shame he can't be here today. I understand he's got a young addition to the family, which may be the reason. So, congratulate him on that. But hopefully it won't distract him too much. But, Stefan, is it a conversation you could have with Jonas?
I don't know. Could it be an open conversation?
It could be an open conversation, but I need someone to initiate it.
On the two main.
I would say that it could be good to have someone in Stockholm.
Because you don't live in Stockholm, that's a good idea.
Because the face-to-face meeting is more.
Yeah. So, anyone from the Stockholm area like to talk to him?
Because for me, this is political stuff, and I don't care about it. Actually, I don't just read. I think
Johan, is this something you should be talking to Jonas about, or is it better if it's someone else?
Yeah, I have no problem talking, but I have a feeling that Jonas Not like sticking to me.
Yeah. Would it be better if someone, I mean, Jan, are you based in Stockholm? Do you know Jonas reasonably well?
As far as we work on this project together,
Could you try talking to him?
I can try talking to him, but I don't understand at all what the political issue is.
Well, I think we have a proposal. Let's just like say we want to do this.
Can we make them both two mailing lists? I mean, Johan, you can speak for Open. Are you happy to make your side of the mailing list implement a cross-posting thing if the other side does as well?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, great. So
I can talk about that won't be any different from today. It's just as automatic.
Yeah. So you reject post. Yeah. The only one who'll be upset will be Ruben.
His message is going to be shown or not.
Yeah, which is good for him ultimately. Yeah. Yeah.
But they're also in the that's perhaps not a solution. Jonas not there and he's responsible for. But I mean, it is of course raising question marks for every guy coming outside and seeing, okay, why is it two parts in this project? Which one should I join and how should I do this? It is not very good.
It's confusing.
It's sad that it's raising question marks.
Can I ask, of people who are new to the project in the last year or so, was anyone confused by the fact there's two mailing lists? Yeah? All right, fair enough.
I get asked.
ICR.
IRC.
Yeah, exactly. Lists and so on. Why is it two? And I know that there is...
That's a bit different. That's different.
I think that is more logical. Because OpenRISC, there we discuss OpenRISC. OpenCores, there we discuss IP cores, everything else that is called.
Yeah. So,
if the other list was OpenCores at opencores.org,
because
that would be different to OpenRISC.
On IRC, if I would go on and I would be interested in OpenRISC, I would try to join OpenRISC, and no one's there. What's this? That's the logical entry point.
And you're the maintainer on OpenRISC, aren't you?
Yeah.
I started a wishbone mailing list on OpenCores for more, wishbone related things.
Yeah.
That's a consideration also. Just as OpenCores and OpenRISC, IRC channel.
Yeah, I think the IRC runs
that's all that needs to. Okay, I think on the OpenRISC.net, I didn't put it on my list because I can't see a way of solving. Jonas wants to have his own website, and it would be great to find a way to fold it all in so it made sense. And it does cause confusion because people ask me about it, but it's one of those things. I suspect just we have to let time take its course. I didn't think we could do anything about solving it here, so I didn't put it up on my list of things. But Julius,
OpenRISC.net webpage. I don't know. There's nothing there really.
Yeah, which can be. That's the bad marketing too. There's not much to OpenRISC, so that's where you go.
There's almost no Git stuff hosted there anymore. He's hosting a couple of mainline versions.
Linux.
Oh yeah, sure. The Linux is there, but it's not used as a generic Git thing anymore. There's a little bit of how to build a tool chain once upon a time, but there's a little bit of that all over the internet.
An ancient emphasis.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't see that it's doing any harm. I think people, if they Google OpenRISC, what do you get?
You get Wikipedia.
opencores.org/OR1K.
Excellent.
Click. Done.
I get the OpenRISC.net.
Are you?
Yeah. But I would like to see,
I'm getting the wiki
that this is the OpenRISC for Linux main thing, because that's where the OpenRISC for Linux for OpenRISC is hosted, and that's the main line.
Yeah.
I guess.
But let's just let time take its course. I think I did have a question, which we're all into open source, and we don't like patents and all that sort of thing. And the whole intellectual property thing is generally a pain in the nuts. But one thing that a lot of open source projects do is they do trademark their brand, and they do it to protect its openness and stop it being hijacked by people who then want to go and turn it proprietary. And I'm just curious as to whether you've ever considered, as the owners of OpenCores, trademarking OpenCores and OpenRISC as brand names for the OpenCores.
Yeah, OpenCores is trademark.
What about OpenRISC?
That's also a trademark, but locally. Yes.
I mean,
Have you searched for the OpenRISC Alina?
What?
You find something very funny there.
How do you spell Alina?
A-L-E-N-A.
as in the company.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I had to read it like...
OpenRISC Alina.
That's OnRISC.
I had to
OpenRISC.
6 times before I realized that it had nothing to do with OpenRISC.
It's not, it's OnRISC, isn't it? Yeah.
No, A-L-E...
I found this one,
Okay, yeah.
but they changed it to OnRISC. Did you email them, Johan?
but they haven't changed it.
Yeah, it says OnRISC now.
Yeah, OpenRISC.
Yeah, but that must be...
Yeah, but here we were
Yeah, I found that and emailed you, right?
discussed with them for like 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then just told them, yeah, but then we just told them that this is not a very proper name since you don't use OpenRISC at all. But they didn't care, and then Olof actually mentioned it for a couple of weeks ago. So, sent a new email.
There's the PDF still says.
But the PDF still says OpenRISC on it.
But they've changed it clearly. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, okay, that's interesting to know you have got it, but it should show on the website that it's a registered trademark to scare people off.
Yeah.
You've got it as a community mark in the EU, have you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you've got it, trademarked in 27 countries as a start. And it will be good to have the little R put on the web page just to make it clear to people and warn people off. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's almost that, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think that's this discussion. And if I just go and look
I can say something more. I'm not sure if it's possible to solve, but regarding this, to have the mature versions on OpenCores, though, I can discuss with our guy that works updating it. But the problem was when people said we should just keep on OpenCores was that it's probably fairly easy to do it for a few projects, but do it for 907 projects, each one was not workflow that we
you need Gittos.
Getting Git for all projects.
Yeah, but there's a product called Gittos, which is open source, which is for doing Git for 900 projects.
Okay. Yeah, because
the
problem is not for us that it's not that we want to fuck with everyone and say you want it, but we don't. It's of course not the case. It was that we couldn't afford the work package of doing it. That was why we couldn't do it, unfortunately. Otherwise, of course, we would do it. Like, we have no problem with it. But I can check either if this option or at least if we can do it for the OpenRISC project, but of course, that is a kind of a unique project on OpenCores.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So if that could help, like you said, on adding things in that is actually, even if you do it on GitHub, and that's probably fine if it's marketing thing, whatever, YouTube. But if it's easier to add in mature things, that's of course something they can.
Git makes that sort of thing very easy to do, so it's actually quite easy. The whole point is to have multiple repositories.
The important thing is that we find a good solution that makes it easy for people to find information and start working. Otherwise, we'll stuck here with 25.
You can easily put up a mirror to GitHub projects on OpenCores. So it's not a big problem. If you want.
I would say we do that first with the components that we have split it out of the main tree. Because just converting the whole tree as this too large.
No, I'd do it. Yeah. Okay.
Just a quick on the GitHub thing. That the main point why I like it is it's easy to set up projects. You can start a new project and just push your stuff there. it's easy.
Like 3 minutes work, if that.
Yeah. So if OpenCores.org is gonna set up a Git, it has to be like that. It has to be easy to set up a new project. It has to be easy to start new repositories. It has to be easy to use and yeah, I realize it's hard to get it for all the projects, but if you start a new project on like just not thinking about OpenRISC, if you start a new project, I think it should be available for everybody to use it then as well. Yeah.
Okay.
That's just like a side comment.
I agree.
That's how I think it should work.
As a user, if I go back to being a user here, I'm not really bothered all of where things are stored. I just want to know a link to where I get the things. I mean, that's the problem here. I mean, when I started looking for this, I couldn't find the information because there wasn't just simple follow this. Now, what's the Git SVN for me? Doesn't really matter. It's just going
I think in your case, it wasn't a lack of a link, it was a lack of that thing existing. But you're right, if someone is now looking for that, there should be a link there, because it does exist.
Yeah, and that's, you find this, where you find the information. Okay, that way it's stored.
Yeah. And also, but I think that goes back to what Julius is saying, that, okay, we have one page where everything is stored, that all the information, like one place where all the information is stored, that's at least like a start. Then it doesn't matter where it is actually then in the end.
And Git is easily mirrored, and then from the user point of view, if it's not a committer, then you don't really know which repository is the main one and which is just a mirror. That's actually the idea. If you download, for example, stuff for Gentoo, which was quite a good example of how user works with a project, then it starts downloading it from one site. If it fails, it starts from another, etc. So you're not really interested where it's kept. So the problem, you usually mirror it. Gentoo mirrors all the, for example, all the sources, just so that it's available. But it doesn't mean they really bother about like telling people you shouldn't put your repository here or you should use Git, etc. They just mirror the files that they're available. So they broaden the availability, but they don't really affect the development, and I think that should be done that way. So if you want to mirror something on OpenCores, we should do it. But if let's say there are some small tools that just one person writes, I think some of the people would stop doing that if you would tell them that they have to apply to certain rules, use this, put it on this side, register on this side, and etc. But you can mirror it because it's open source. You can do it.
Okay.
I mean, that's the idea of open source, I think.
Time, I think, has caught up with us. I have one last question, which is to ask Johan. You have a representative of the community here. Is there anything you'd particularly like to communicate with the community as a whole that we can do to make OpenCores better?
Yeah, but I think it has been said here today a lot of good things, and I think it's important that we kind of bring them with us from this meeting and see that OpenCores is a good brand, it's a good place with, of course, some things missing, but the important thing is that we actually build a place that is easy for users, developers, all kind of parties to start finding information and get interested in this. Because the important thing is, in the bottom of the end of the day, is that people actually start contributing, start using what we do, and all these kind of things. That's what we all want to achieve. So it has to have that in back of mind. How can we do OpenCores better? And we like critique or whatever and ideas as long as they are constructive. And from the meeting we had before, there is idea, but they haven't been constructive. There has been a lot of other kind of discussion. And I think today there's a totally different kind of mentality. I think everyone seems very positive and actually eager to do a lot of good things. So hopefully this is a very good.
I actually had a proposition earlier today along these lines. If we're talking so much about the structure of the project, the documentation, the problems with finding stuff on Course, etc., why don't we do wiki fixing session alongside the bug squishing session?
I think it's a good idea.
We've had a lot of the technical development in different place.
Or you file a bug about the wiki.
You can always do that. But, I mean, there's a couple of inconsistencies and stuff that's been hanging
That's a good idea. I think it's a good idea.
Tomorrow, I think we can certainly put that on.
Okay, right. Time. We have dinner at Sue Ellen's in 15 minutes' time. Can I thank RTE for hosting us?
Oh, wait,
Okay, Julius. Sorry. Okay.
So, all right, thanks everyone for coming along today. Yeah, the time is against us. So, Ben and Ewan. Ben, come here. Yeah, thanks very much, RTE. And also for organising today. Ben and Ewan have been the boys on the ground here for me in Sweden. So, I brought a little gift from England for you. Oh. There you go. It's English single malt whiskey. Not Scottish, English. So there you go. No, thank you guys. It's been a very constructive day, and thanks everyone for coming. It's been really good. You guys have looked after us, and yeah, things have been good today. Very good presentation. Thank you to all the presenters. It's been good. I think it's going to continue tomorrow. We're going to be back here and having a few more discussions and maybe getting a bit more hands-on. So, for those of you who are joining us for dinner, that'll be really good. For those of you who aren't on the dinner list but want to hang around, I don't know, there's a bar there, and you can probably come along to the restaurant and see if I'll see you anyway. But yeah, it's been really good. And thank you all. And I'll see you later and tomorrow as well.
What time tomorrow?
11.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that.
Thanks, Julius.
Cool.